Hi everybody, this is Miles from Grip, and I'm going to show you how to use the program called Meshmixer. While I'm getting it open, Meshmixer is a great program for editing STL files. STL files are a type of 3D file that's used to send to the printer to print things out. It's basically a model that's made out of triangular segments, and I'll show you how to use it, but it's really good for editing STLs. Unlike SolidWorks, it's not dimensional, it's more artistic based. So even if you're not in an engineering related field, this is very useful, and if you are, this is still very useful. So when you open Meshmixer, a screen like this will pop up. You can X out of it, it doesn't really matter. The 6 main buttons on the screen. Import is used to import an STL, or you can open a Meshmixer file. Keyboard shortcuts I'll let you guys look at yourself, but it basically just lists shortcuts for doing certain things, and I'll mention a few as I go along. Import plane you don't have to worry about. Import sphere you don't have to worry about. And import bunny we will use to show you and demonstrate some stuff for Meshmixer. So I'm first going to press on import bunny, and you'll see there's a bunny now on this kind of plate. This plate is called the build plate. It's kind of replicating a 3D printing build plate, and to either turn it off or turn it on, you can go up here where it says view, and where it says show print bed, if you press that it will make it disappear. You can put it back on view. You can make the grid lines disappear on the print bed. You can turn those back on. So there's options for different viewing patterns here. You can view a wireframe. Like I said, STLs are made of triangles, so this is showing all the little triangular segments that are making up this bunny. But we're going to turn that off for the moment. Let's see. So the first thing I'm going to show you is some basic commands on Meshmixer, and then we'll go into kind of a sculpting aspect of Meshmixer, and then transition to selecting certain areas and making possible sockets for recipients to put their arms into from this program. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you some of these things on the left here. So you have import, which is used to import another 3D file, and if you press on import and go press append just means I already have a file in here and I want to add to it, I don't want to replace it. And if you go into the models folder of the Meshmixer file folder, you'll find a bunch of STLs in here describing different objects that you can add into it. So basically what you do is, I've already had the bunny added into here. So what we're going to do is go to edit. So on edit, there's all kinds of different commands that you can do to this bunny. The first one we're going to try is called the mirror command. But actually, before I get to that, I'm going to talk about what a transform is. So when you transform in Meshmixer, one of the shortcuts to get to the transform is the letter T on the keyboard. So if I cancel this and press T, it pops back up. The different commands for viewing objects in Meshmixer. So I'm going to press cancel it. If you have a mouse, it's beneficial. I wouldn't recommend using Meshmixer without a mouse. So when you have a mouse, if you hold down the right click button and move your mouse around, you can rotate the object and see it in different views. If you left click the screen, it doesn't really do anything. If you press your scroll button down, you can pan view it. And those are basically the main ones. You can also zoom in and out with the scroll button by moving it. So we're going to go back to this thing called transform. So I'm going to press the letter T on my keyboard and have transform come up. And you'll see all these direction areas are on this object. So what we're going to do is play around and kind of move this object around. So if I want to move it in this red direction area, I press the red direction arrow, I hold my left click mouse button down, and I move it and the object moves. If I click the blue one, same thing. If I click the green one, same thing. And if I press the end there, I can actually scale it in a certain direction. I don't really want to keep it like that, so like in Microsoft Word, if you press Ctrl Z, it moves it back to its original shape. Then you have these side, I guess, angled kind of looking arches, and that's used to rotate the object in certain ways. Now, if you look here, if I go to this kind of where these circle dashes are, I can increment the rotations in 5 degrees. And that works on all the different planes. So if I go out to here, 5 degrees, 5 degrees. Then these internal triangles are used to move the object relative to the plane that the triangles are in. So if I want to move it in that plane, I move that. If I move it in the red plane, I move that. Same thing with the green plane. And you'll notice as I'm moving it, in the top left corner here, those values are changing. So once again, as I'm moving it, the translate Z button is changing, translate X. So if you know that translate Z is this way, and I want to rotate the bunny this way, I can actually go into rotate Z and press 30, let's say, and it will rotate the bunny 30 degrees in this direction. We're going to press Ctrl Z, so we don't want to do that. And you can play around with this. You can scale in different directions. You can do uniform scaling. To uniformly scale this whole thing, there's that little white cube in the middle that you press down, and you pull it up to scale it in and out. That's mostly everything for here. And there's another thing which is important to know. It's the difference between a local frame and a world frame. So if you look here, it says local frame and there's world frame. So let's say I rotate this, and you'll notice the coordinate axes rotate as well, and I move it along this direction. And now I want to move it straight down to the build plate. With these direction areas, there's no real way for me to move it straight down to the build plate. So what I have to do is go to local frame, move that to world frame, and you'll notice if you look at the arrow axes, they change to a normal kind of orientation where I can now move the bunny relative to the build plate instead of to the bunny itself. If I go back to local frame, it changes that back to the orientation of the bunny, or the coordinate frames. That's about it for transform, so I'm going to press cancel. And remember, I got to transform by going to edit. So I'm going to go to edit again, and so we did transform. We're going to try mirror for the moment. So when I press mirror, it selects the bunny, and it gives me this kind of grid-like pattern, and it also gives me a set of axes. So by moving the axes, you'll see what it does, but it's mirroring the bunny relative to this coordinate plane. And as you play around with it, you'll see what it's doing. It's mirroring it relative to that direction. This blue row is for switching the directions that the bunny is mirrored in. So if I want that way, with I guess the butt of the bunny to be mirrored in that orientation, or if I want to switch it back, I can do it. That's like a bunny that has nothing. Now if you saw that red line, the red line is basically I'm holding down my left click mouse button, and it's creating the grid plane right where I'm drawing the plane. So if I draw it there, it's making a very weird plane. If I draw it there, it's making a weird plane, and then I can move that relative to where I'm drawing it. So let's cancel that for the moment, because you learn, and then if you want to accept this, you press accept and it keeps it. So that's mirror. Duplicate is just what you think. It duplicates the bunny. So the thing with duplicate is that if you press duplicate, it shows it on here called an object browser as a different object. So you can X that out. But you'll notice that it only looks like there's still one bunny, and that's because they're overlaid on top of each other. So to separate them, you have to click one of the bunnies, and you'll see it highlight. Press T to transform, and move the bunny out of the way, and you'll see that a bunny was inside another bunny. So now I have two bunnies. So I'm going to accept. So I have two duplicates, and as I press one to the other, each one highlights. And when it's highlighted, it means whatever commands you do are only going to be done to the highlighted area or object. So I'm going to go back to edit, and so we did duplicate, we did mirror, transform we did. Align you don't really have to know, but it's like aligning it with the build plate, but I'll leave that for you guys to figure out. Plane cut is used a lot. So if I want to go to this bunny, again, I'm moving the screen by holding down my scroll mouse button. I'm zooming in and out with the scroll wheel. Right click is to rotate. If I press plane cut, it has this cut plane over here that's going on this bunny. Remember, since this bunny is selected, it's not affecting this bunny. So I can rotate this to cut the bunny, and you'll see on the bottom I'm actually cutting part of the bunny off. And let's say I wanted the bottom half of the bunny instead. I go to this blue arrow here and click that, and it switches the orientation of the cut plane. And you can select different options to either cut both or slice both. A lot of this program you have to kind of play around with, but I'm going to give you the basics. So that's to cut the bunny. Now, let's say we didn't want this exact orientation, it was like really annoying with the grid plane. Again, you can left click with your mouse, pull that red line down, and it will put a grid cut plane right where you're drawing the red line. If I want it there, it will draw it there. So that's plane cut. So let's say we cut the bunny at the head, it's cut, I have the solid plane there, and I press accept. So now I have a cut bunny with a cut right there. So that's plane cut. Close cracks, again, you have to play around with. Make solid, I'll go over after. Let's see, you don't really need any of these. Hollow is important, so let's say I want to make this bunny hollow on the inside. I just select it, I press the hollow command, and you'll see as it's loading that it will create kind of an inside shell of the bunny that I can change the distance up here, offset distance. Let's say I do it as 3 millimeters, and I press update hollow, and it will load like this sometimes, and it updates, and I see what it's doing, and I press accept. From the outside, it doesn't look like anything happened, but if you do a plane cut, you'll see that I actually made a hollowed out section within the bunny. So it didn't really do exactly what I wanted it to do, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z, and I'm going to press Ctrl Z again, and if I do a plane cut, I see that it again didn't do what I want. Let's see here. So I'm kind of Ctrl Zing back to the hollowing command, and so I guess what it's doing is it's making the inside solid and the outside what's called a surface. So let me check that really quick to make sure. Hollow. Oops, wrong command. And now it doesn't appear. So let's check to make sure. Okay, so it's basically, I have a surface here, so that's the problem. So I'm going to show you a different command before I get to the hollow command. So right now, we have a surface of a bunny. If you look underneath, which you can't see, so I'm going to put the print bed off, you'll see that I have a surface of the bunny. This bunny isn't actually hollow inside, or solid inside. It's completely hollow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press make solid, and it's taking this bunny, all the surfaces, and making the whole thing solid. So now I have one solid bunny. So if I press accept, and I'll put the print bed back on. If I do a plane cut now, you'll see that the plane cut is completely solid. It's like I'm cutting into a solid object. So now when I do the hollow command, it's going to offset the distance of the inside, like I showed you before, but instead of making the inner part hollow or solid, it will hopefully make the inner part hollow and the outside solid. So I'm going to press the accept. Hopefully it works this time. So plane cut, and you'll see here that now it's doing what I want. It has the inside as hollow, like if you eat like a chocolate bunny or something, and the outside boundary is actually a solid wall here. So it's really cool for making different shapes. If you wanted to make molds on the 3D printer, you could do that too. Meshmixer is a very versatile program. So I'm going to press cancel for the moment, and I'm going to delete this bunny just by pressing delete. And I'm going to move on to our full bunny here, and I'm going to move him over to, over to the center. So back to edit. We basically did everything that's important, made solid. Yeah, that's basically everything important over here. Analysis, you don't really have to touch, so don't worry about that. If you want to, I guess come talk to me after if you want more practice in these. I don't really know everything about these, but you really don't need to know these for the most part to begin. Again, with shaders and everything else, you don't really need to know. So the next thing is called sculpt. So when you sculpt something in Meshmixer, it's almost like an artistic program where you're actually sculpting it in real life. So you'll notice up here, it has all these different kinds of brushes called drag, draw, flatten. And again, you have to play around with these to kind of get kind of a feel for them. But for instance, let's go to the robust smooth one. I press robust smooth, and it gives me the sphere on the mouse. And if I zoom in to a certain part, let's say here, you'll notice that you see a crease in the skin of the bunny denoting the leg. If I press the size here, I can increase the size of the sphere. And what's cool about this is as I go over this area, it's smoothing it out. So now you don't even see the crease at all. It kind of looks like it's one smooth area. And all I did was I pressed the size up and I left clicked my mouse button to make it smooth. And I can do that with all the areas on the bunny. I can go over here, I can press the smooth command, and it will make fairly easy any area smoothened out. So if you have like a creased part or a part that's like jagged, it will smooth it out very easily. And they have all kinds of different brushes here. They have a drag brush, so if you want to drag this part of the material up, you can do that. So you can make little spikes in the bunny. You can, let's see, flatten. If I want to flatten one of these, I can flatten it out. If I want to flatten the bunny's nose, I can do that too. And you'll notice that when I'm done, it's actually making a completely flat surface on the nose of the bunny. Let's see, flatten, there's spikes. Spikes you don't have to worry about, but a spike is basically you press down somewhere, and it basically makes a spike coming out of the bunny. I'm sorry, Mr. Bunny. Let's see, move is just moving material really. So it's kind of the same thing as drag. Pinch. Again, a lot of these you kind of just got to play around with. If I'm pinching one area, it's kind of making all the points on that one area go to one spot. So over here, I pinched it and now all those points are going to that one spot. Then we have inflate. So if I want to inflate this nose up, I hold down the inflate button, and it's basically almost like adding air to the solid of the bunny's nose. If I wanted to inflate, let's say his ear, I would press inflate, and it kind of adds one more layer to his ear, and it overextends it. A lot of this is visual. Again, you have to play around with it to really get a feel for it. But just play around with all these different tools for sculpting, and you should get the hang of it. Fall off, color, so all that's set. So what I'm going to do now is show you another area of Meshmixer. So we're going to, let's see, we'll leave the bunny for the moment, and we'll import, let's see, what should we do? So we'll do Meshmix. So Meshmix is another thing in Meshmixer where you can add shapes onto an already existing shape. So there's some basic shapes here. What I'm going to go to though is, if you go up here, it has all these different shapes, and to show you specifically what I want to improve on in the future is an arm. So I'm going to press the arm command, and you'll see that it has all these different basically 3D models of arms. So we're going to take the second from the top, and you'll left click your mouse button down, and you're going to drag it onto the bunny somewhere. So let's say there, and then let go of the mouse button, and it will move that arm onto the bunny. Again, I'm sorry if the visual of this bunny and the arm is graphic. Should have said viewer discretion is advised, but I didn't. So we will make it through this together. So you have this arm here, and you'll notice that the circle here, if you click on it with your left mouse button and move it around, it swivels the arm around the surface. If you click the middle, you can move it on the surface of the bunny. So I'll actually go around all the surface of the bunny and take the shape. So you can rotate it, you can press the middle ball to move it along the surface, and then this arrow over here is used to size the arm. So if I go out and I press this area and move it out, not too much, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z. So let's do it, I guess, this way. Whoops. Move that there. Move it up, size it up a bit. Not too big. And press accept. The arm is now part of the bunny. Really though, it's somewhat two different shapes. So what I have to do is go to edit. Or I have to, well, I guess they are one shape. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to go to make solid. And it's going to basically make that arm the same color as the bunny. And make it one solid shape. And you could use the sculpting tools to kind of smoothen out that area over here. So we'll do that right now. Press accept. Go to sculpt. Let's see, robust smooth. And I can go to the areas around it and smoothen out the area. Like right here is a perfect example. It's very jagged. And smooth out that area so the arm looks like it's actually coming out of the bunny, where it's a very smooth transition of the area. So now I have the arm, and what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to, let's see, Meshmixer, I put the arm in. Let's go to, oh, I know what I want to do. So we're going to go to sculpt, and we're going to kind of make an up arm difference on this arm. So we're going to brushes, and we're going to go to, actually we're going to go to edit, and we're going to go to plane cut, and we're going to cut the top portion of this arm off like that. So the person's arm is getting cut off. We'll cut it a little bit smaller and press accept. Then we're going to go to sculpt, or brushes, inflate, and we're going to kind of inflate the arm out a bit to kind of realistically look like maybe one of the arms that we get from someone else. And then we're going to press edit and make solid to make the whole shape the same color. So now you have an arm of someone else. Try to ignore the bunny in the background. And what we're going to do is, this is important in the future when we actually get 3D scans from patients, hopefully, is we're basically going to make kind of a socket that can fit over this arm profile. Methods are still being developed, but I'd like everyone to learn this if possible. So you're going to press select, or I guess first accept to accept the solid part. And you're going to go to select, and you'll see where it says sphere brush size. So you'll see this brush again, this kind of like solid sphere, and the size can be determined by moving this toggle up and down. So if I go in here and I select the arm, you'll see that it's selecting a certain area of that end arm. So I'm going to go down to about the wrist. And now what I do is, if you press the letter B on your keyboard, it will make this blue kind of boundary here. Press accept, and it will make a very smooth boundary of the area you selected. So before you might have it be jagged, after it will be very smooth. So what you're doing, you're selecting this surface. So then what you want to do is you want to basically take this surface out and extract it. So there's a lot of other commands here. Again, you're going to have to kind of play around with these yourselves to get a hang with it. But the main one I'm going to show you is extract. So I'm going to press extract, and it says offset. So I'm going to move the offset up, and you'll see that it's extracting the actual surface geometry from the part on the arm that I selected out of it. I'm going to press accept. Then I'm going to go to convert to solid part and press accept again. So what that's doing is it's, let's see, select, nope, Control exit. If you press exit in the top left corner of your keyboard, you'll be able to control the different, or kind of exit out of the commands. You're going to now have to go to edit and then separate shells. After you do this a few times, it will start to make sense. And press X. And now it's separating this bunny from this hand. So they're two separate parts now. Now what I want to do is I want to press the select tool again. and you can press Control A on your keyboard to select the whole area of the hand profile that we extracted out. And now you're going to go to Edit and go to Offset. So what Offset does is it basically makes kind of a thickening of the surface that you had originally. And you have to make sure that Connected is checked, or else if it's not, you're going to get something that looks like this, where there are two different surfaces. But if you have Connected, it will connect them together. So now, if I press Accept, and you can set a certain distance on how far out you want the kind of the thickening to go. If I press Accept, I now have a hand here where the inside of the hand has the exact geometry of the surface we selected on the arm attached to the bunny. And then you can take this, you can make a socket out of this given their geometry, and you could import this part into another 3D modeling program, let's say Tinkercad or even Meshmixer again, and make maybe attachments to attach to here, to attach onto a device. There's all kinds of opportunities on Meshmixer to do that. So let's say we want to delete the bunny, so we select it, we press delete on our keyboard, and now we only have this hand. What we do is we now go to File, and on File there's like Save As, it's saving this Meshmixer file. There's Import, importing the different animals or shapes that are in the Models folder of the Meshmixer program. And then they have Export here at the bottom. So when you press Export, you can export it as an STL. So we'll say hand example, and I'll save it to my desktop. And now if I go onto my desktop where it says hand example, I'm going to right click it and open it in a kind of an STL viewer software, and you'll see that I've effectively made a model with the geometry of the hand that we took the selected surface from. And you can see it's a little rugged on the outside, and if you put it back into Meshmixer, because you can import STLs into Meshmixer, you can kind of smoothen the boundaries out on the outside using those sculpting tools. And that's basically the end of Meshmixer. If you have other questions, you can come see me. I'm usually in the lab. There's lots of tutorials online for Meshmixer. And remember that when you first open Meshmixer up, Alexa here to show you. Don't save. When you first open Meshmixer up, Meshmixer has a window here called Keyboard Shortcuts, and it opens a PDF with all kinds of shortcuts that I've used today in the program. So if you get lost, you can refer to these. That's basically Meshmixer in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed my video, and have a good rest of your day.